The kingdom of Valoria had always been known for its towering castles and sprawling fields, but there was a shadow over it, a curse that had haunted the royal family for generations. The curse was an old story, one whispered in the halls of the palace, in the marketplace, and even in the quietest corners of the royal library. It was said that the royal bloodline would never be free. Each heir born to the throne would die young, their life stolen before they could rule. For Princess Amara, this curse had always been more than a tale told by old servants to scare the children. It was her reality. She had watched her cousins, aunts, and uncles fall, each one claimed by the curse before their time. Now, as she stood before the grand mirror in her chamber, the weight of it settled on her shoulders. The crown that had once seemed so distant, so out of reach, now loomed ahead of her like a dark cloud. She was next. Her heart beat heavily in her chest, and though her eyes were clear, her mind was clouded. Her family had always told her that she would break the curse, that she would be the one to lift the burden of death from the royal line. But Amara had never felt like the heroine of a legend. She was just a girl with hopes and dreams who yearned for a life beyond the palace walls. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. "Your Highness, it is time." Amara turned to see her maid, a young woman named Lila, standing in the doorway, her hands wringing nervously. It was the day of her arranged marriage, an alliance with the Mafia that ruled the underground world of Valoria. "Yes, Lila," Amara said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I know." Amara had heard the rumors about the Mafia boss, Dante Vornetti. They said he was ruthless. He was feared by everyone, even the most powerful nobles. He controlled not only the underworld of Valoria, but also its magic, the strange, hidden magic that flowed through the veins of the land. His bloodline was as old as the curse, and there were whispers that he was somehow connected to it, though no one dared speak of it openly. As Amara walked to the grand hall, her mind raced with thoughts of the man she was about to marry. She had seen him once before in a fleeting moment during a royal gathering. His dark eyes had caught hers, and in that instant there was a flicker of something, a connection, an awareness between them. It was brief, but it left her unsettled. As the doors to the grand hall opened, Amara was greeted by her father, King Alistair. His face was tense, his eyes hard with the weight of his duties. There was no warmth in his gaze as he looked at his daughter. "Amara," the king said, his voice as cold as the stone walls of the castle. "This marriage is the only way to secure the future of Valoria. You understand that, don't you?" Amara nodded, though her throat was tight. She understood, but that did not mean she agreed. The royal family had been tied to the Mafia for as long as anyone could remember, their power and influence growing in silence. The marriage was meant to seal an alliance, to ensure that the Mafia would support the throne in the coming war against the supernatural forces that were rising in the east. Her heart thudded in her chest as she stepped forward. There, standing at the altar, was Dante Vornetti. He was taller than most men, with broad shoulders and a presence that seemed to fill the room. His dark hair was slicked back, and his sharp features gave him a striking, almost otherworldly appearance. His eyes, cold and calculating, met hers. They were as black as the night, and yet there was something about them that made her feel like he was looking straight into her soul. He did not smile, nor did he show any sign of emotion. He was a king in his own right, and he wore his power like a cloak. "Princess Amara," he said, his voice low and smooth, like velvet, "I hope you are ready to join your destiny with mine." The words should have sounded harsh, commanding even, but there was something in the way he spoke them that made Amara's heart beat a little faster. She could not explain it. She had spent her life preparing for this moment, for the marriage that would secure her family's future, but standing here now, facing this man, she felt an unexplainable tension in the air. She tried to push the feeling aside, but it clung to her like a shadow she could not escape. The ceremony went on. But Amara's mind was a whirlwind. She repeated her vows, though her thoughts kept drifting back to Dante. There was something about him that was not just his appearance. There was a power in him, a darkness that seemed to seep from his very being. She could feel it even now, as he stood beside her. As they sealed the marriage with a simple touch of their hands, the crowd cheered, but Amara's heart was heavy with the weight of what she had just done. She had joined herself to him, to a man who was both a stranger and somehow, in a way she could not understand, already tied to her fate. Dante's hand lingered on hers for just a moment longer than necessary, and in that brief contact, Amara felt a surge of warmth, then a sudden chill. She pulled her hand away, trying to hide the tremor she felt inside. Later that evening, as the celebration continued, Amara found herself alone in the garden, seeking solace beneath the moonlit sky. The cool night air brushed against her skin, but it did little to calm the storm inside her. She needed to think, to gather her thoughts. "You look lost, Your Highness," the voice startled her. She turned, and there, emerging from the shadows, stood Dante. He stepped closer, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the garden. His eyes, now soft and unreadable, locked onto hers. "I often come here to think," he said, his tone almost gentle. "The night has a way of revealing truths that daylight hides." Amara found herself speechless. She had never imagined that this man, this Mafia boss who controlled everything, would speak to her like this, as though they were equals. "I'm not sure I understand," she finally managed. "What truth are you speaking of?" Dante paused, his gaze softening ever so slightly. "The truth about us. About why we're here." Amara's breath caught in her throat. She had no answer. There was no answer that made sense. Dante took a step closer. "I don't expect you to understand everything now, but there are forces at work, ancient powers that go beyond the politics of our families, forces that have been waiting for you." Amara's heart skipped a beat. Was he speaking of the curse, of the strange things she had always felt but never understood? Before she could respond, he turned, his expression darkening. "The night is long and there is much to be done. Don't think this marriage is just a formality, Princess. You will learn what I mean in time." Amara stood there, watching him disappear back into the shadows, her mind swirling with unanswered questions. She had married him to protect her kingdom, but she had no idea what she had truly signed up for. The weeks following the marriage were filled with a strange tension. Princess Amara had expected her life to change in grand, obvious ways, but the shift was subtle, like a shadow creeping across a room. The marriage itself was a political move, a symbol of peace between the royal family and the Mafia, yet it was becoming clear that it was more than just a contract. There was something deeper, something darker, that tied her to Dante Vornetti. Each day, Amara found herself growing more confused. Dante was not the cold, ruthless man she had imagined. Yes, he was a leader of the underworld, a man of power and secrets, but in his presence, she saw glimpses of something else, something hidden beneath the surface. There were moments when his sharp gaze softened, when his voice lost its usual steel, and in those rare instances, Amara saw the man he might have been before the world had turned him into a king of shadows. She had tried to keep her distance, but it was becoming harder to ignore the pull between them. She had felt it the night of their marriage, the strange connection that seemed to draw her toward him, even when she wanted to pull away. Every time their paths crossed, every time they spoke, she felt something stir inside her, a longing she could neither explain nor deny. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the palace gardens, Amara found herself alone again, walking in the quiet solitude of the royal grounds. She had grown used to these walks, using them to clear her mind. But tonight, she felt a strange unease, as though the air itself was charged with an energy she couldn't understand. She paused near a fountain, the water sparkling in the fading light. The sound of footsteps behind her made her heart skip a beat. "You are hard to find, Princess," Dante's voice called softly from the shadows. Amara turned, her breath catching in her throat. He had a way of appearing without warning, like a shadow that never truly left her side. His dark eyes met hers, and for a moment it felt as though the entire world had gone silent. The garden, the palace, the kingdom, all of it faded away, and there was only Dante and her. "I needed some time alone," Amara said, her voice quiet. "The palace is overwhelming sometimes," Dante studied her for a moment, his gaze unwavering. There was something in his eyes, something that made Amara feel as though he could see through her, into the very depths of her soul. "I understand," he said, his tone softening. "The weight of it all, it is not something you can escape from, no matter how far you go." Amara looked away, her heart heavy with the truth in his words. She had always known that the curse, the weight of the royal bloodline, would follow her no matter what she did. But now, in Dante's presence, it felt even more suffocating, as if the curse was not just something that bound her to her family, but also to him, to his world. "You didn't ask for this, did you?" Dante's voice interrupted her thoughts, a hint of something vulnerable in his words. "Neither of us did." She met his gaze, searching his face for any hint of the man she had married. But all she saw was the same mystery, the same guarded expression that had been there from the start. "I didn't," Amara replied honestly, her voice tinged with sadness. "But I didn't have a choice. None of us did." Dante took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You think that your family's curse is the only thing that binds us. But there is something more at work here. Something ancient. Something neither of us can control." Amara felt a chill run down her spine at his words. She had heard the whispers, the rumors of prophecies and dark magic, but she had never believed them until now. There was an undeniable force between them, something that felt both inevitable and dangerous. "Tell me," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "what is this curse you speak of? What does it have to do with me, with us?" Dante's expression shifted, and for the first time since they had met, there was a flicker of something almost like fear in his eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by his usual calm demeanor. "I will tell you everything, but not now." "Not yet," he said, his voice low. "There are things you must learn on your own. The curse is not just about bloodlines, it's about choices and about fate. We are both tied to it, Amara, and there is no escaping what is meant to be." Amara felt a knot form in her chest. There was something he wasn't telling her, something he was keeping hidden. But the more she looked into his eyes, the more she realized that he, too, was trapped by the same fate. The moment stretched between them, charged with an energy neither of them could ignore. Then, as if breaking some unspoken tension, Dante stepped back, his gaze softening. "You should go inside," he said. "The night is full of ghosts, and we both have enough of our own to deal with." Amara nodded, though her mind was still reeling from his words. She turned to leave, but as she did, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something bigger than the curse. Something that neither she nor Dante could control. The following days were filled with a sense of waiting. Amara could feel it in the air, in the way the servants moved a little faster, in the way the nobles spoke in hushed tones. Something was changing. Something was shifting, and she could not stop it. She spent more time in the gardens, away from the palace, away from the eyes of the court. She tried to clear her mind, but every time she closed her eyes, Dante's face appeared before her. The way he had looked at her that night in the garden, the weight of his words. It haunted her. One evening, as Amara walked toward the fountain again, she caught sight of a figure standing by the water. She approached cautiously, her heart skipping a beat when she saw who it was. Dante was standing with his back to her, his hands clasped behind his back. The evening was darkening, the sky painted in hues of purple and gold. The garden was quiet, and the only sound was the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze. "Are you here to talk again?" Amara asked, her voice breaking the silence. Dante turned, his eyes flicking to her. There was something different in his expression now. Something softer, more earnest. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low. "The curse we're trapped in. It's not just about what happens to us. It's about what happens to everyone. You and I, we can't change it alone." Amara stepped closer, feeling the weight of his words. "What do you mean? What are we supposed to do?" Dante's eyes locked onto hers, his gaze intense. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I do know that we're bound together by more than just this marriage. We have a purpose, Amara, a reason we're meant to be together, And I'm starting to think it's not just fate that has brought us here. It's something else. Something older than either of us. Amara's heart beat faster as the words sank in. She knew the truth, though she wasn't ready to face it. They were both trapped, tied to each other by a destiny neither of them fully understood. And the more they resisted, the stronger it became.